Hello, and welcome to Barcast Audio. My name is Doc, and I'm an attorney and recent law school graduate, here to help you maneuver your way through what can be an incredibly stressful and overwhelming time in your life, your first few weeks of law school. This short audio is designed to help you manage the many anxieties that accompany the start of law school. For that, I've put together a list of 6 tips that I believe are central to setting yourself up for success. So let's get started. Tip 1 is, do the reading. This one is pretty self-explanatory, but it's insane to me how many people still don't get this when they start law school. If you're a K through JD like I was, meaning you entered law school immediately after college, then listen up carefully because this tip is especially for you. Reading in law school is different from the reading you did in college. Not necessarily in that it's more difficult, but in that there is really no escaping it. Lots of students think they can get by just by skimming the text or reading briefs online. But usually, especially in the first semester, their laziness is going to come back and bite them in the ass come finals time. The importance of doing the reading is really twofold. First and foremost, you do the reading because you don't want to get exposed on a cold call. This is important, but not likely for the reason you think. If you're entering law school, I'm assuming you think of yourself as pretty smart. You likely crushed your college GPA, scored well enough on the LSAT, and are generally regarded by your family and friends as a smart, driven person with a bright future ahead of them. The problem with law school is that this story, to varying degrees, is true of everybody. Most, if not all of your classmates think they are the smartest person in the room in most social interactions. So when you go to law school, some people, those who I would describe as normal people, can naturally feel a bit like a fish out of water. Doubt can sink in, making you question whether you're really as smart and as capable as your classmates. This doubt is insidious, and trust me, it will only be exacerbated by butchering a cold call. The second, and let me be clear, far more important reason for doing the reading is that it will make your life exponentially easier when it comes time to crack down and start preparing for final exams. The most important thing in law school is final exams, not cold calls, which are basically just socially engineered bullying for law students, and not law review either, which is basically just a chance for law schools to promote their shiny new smarties to prospective employers. No, law school is all about exams, and the better position you can place yourself in come final season, the better off you'll be. That means keeping up to date with the reading, at least at the start of the semester, so you can slowly start to see your courses come together in a coherent, cohesive way. With that, let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is establish a routine. Let me start off by saying that I recognize that I'm now talking about establishing routine in the midst of a global pandemic where millions upon millions of people have had their daily lives upturned by the novel coronavirus and the resulting quarantine. So I know that for many of you listening, it's going to feel close to impossible to establish a routine when you're trapped inside your house and quote-unquote attending law school through a Zoom window. But the importance of this quote remains the same. So much of law school, especially one a year, is about building strong habits. That ultimately starts with you. Set your alarm, wake up early, optimize your time. Law school doesn't have to consume your life, but it very easily can if you're not conscious about how you're spending your time every day. You need to block out your time so that come final season, when it feels like you can't possibly find enough time in the day to study all you need to, you can look back and say, I've been setting this hour aside every morning since the start of the semester first started. I've done everything right to this point. Now it's just a matter of finishing. Tip number 3 is put your ego aside. I mentioned this before, but if you're enrolled in law school, it's likely because you're pretty smart. You know it, the people around you likely know it. Some of you have likely been having people tell you how smart you are since you were old enough to walk. Well, guess what? Law school is going to break you. One way or another, it's going to chip away at that ego you've been carefully curating for most of your academic life. It's going to happen when you butcher a cold call and when you first receive a semi-disappointing grade, and when you hear whispers of how the person next to you is studying so hard every day. But it doesn't have to. You entered law school thinking of yourself as a smart, capable person with a bright future ahead of you. Why in the hell would a bad cold call or a disappointing grade change that? You need to put your ego aside. You need to understand that butchering a cold call is essentially a meaningless few minutes that most people aren't even going to remember a year from now. I can guarantee you that at most schools, you could bomb every single cold call you get in your first semester, and so long as you know your material come exam time, you'll still likely end up at the top of your class. But the ego thing isn't just about cold calls. It's about realizing that the way you've studied in the past likely isn't going to work in law school. So cast your ego aside, and I guarantee you, you're going to succeed. Tip 4 is everybody lies. This is less so a tip than it is a known secret. There is nothing law school students like more than talking about how hard they're studying. It's sick. I'm convinced that there is something that happens to people once they start law school that compels them to constantly talk about how late they were up last night or how much work they're putting in. Don't do that. People will hate you. They may not tell you that they hate you, but they will most definitely talk about you behind your back. And more importantly, don't listen to people who do that. Don't make yourself feel bad about how hard your classmates are studying because, number one, many of them are likely straight up lying about how hard they're studying. And number two, some of them may simply have to work that hard just to keep up. Law school is about working smarter, not harder. That balance is a lot more difficult to find your first year, where you're learning the ropes still. But there is no prize in law school for who studied the hardest in September. What matters are results, and how you get there is going to depend on how you learn best. Tip 5 is don't participate to participate. I am firmly of the belief that there is a special place in hell for professors who write on the syllabus that additional points will be awarded to your final grade for quote-unquote extraordinary participation. Why do I feel this way? Because it encourages students to participate for the sake of participating. What is participating for the sake of participating? It's when a student asks an asinine question in the misguided belief their participation will result in their final grade getting a bump. An example would be when you learn a rule and some student in the front raises their hand to ask an insanely specific question. Does the rule of perpetuities apply to land ownership in space? Would RoboCop have First Amendment rights? Does the mailbox rule apply if the mailman is struck by lightning while standing next to the mailbox? Don't participate for the sake of participating. If you want to have a real question, by all means ask. Your professors want you to interact with them. But nobody wants to suffer through an insanely hyper-specific hypothetical that makes the professor's eyes cross and makes all your classmates consider subtweeting you. Tip 6 is my final tip. It's the most important. It's okay to ask for help. This goes back to my tip about ego before. Law school is stressful, it's hard, and it can be extraordinarily isolating at times. Most people who go to law school are accustomed to school coming easy, and it can feel incredibly deflating when law school doesn't follow that course. Don't get down on yourself. Ask for help from your professors, from your classmates, from your friends and family. People want you to succeed. And though it may not feel like it at times, at the end of the day, law school is only school. It's classes and teachers and grades. Nothing more, nothing less. You entered a smart, capable person with a bright future ahead of you. Don't let the challenges and insecurities of law school change how you view yourself. Thank you for listening to Barcast Audio. Be sure to check out our audio outlines at barcastaudio.com. I'll be posting more of these videos throughout the semester, but until now, you can reach me at barcastaudio@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.